The storm unleashed its full fury upon Chicago that night, with winds so fierce that the world seemed to shudder beneath them. Rain crashed down in torrents, hammering the city's crooked streets and drowning them in a relentless rhythm. 6-year-old Emma crouched beneath the battered awning of an old storefront, watching as water pooled around her feet and traced jagged streams down the cobblestones. Her thin frame shivered as the cold seeped through her ragged clothes. She clutched her knees tightly, as if trying to squeeze warmth from them, but the damp chill settled deep into her bones. Emma had been wandering for hours before the rain hit, weaving through the narrow streets with only the faded memories of warmth and safety to keep her company. The city was a shadowy maze of empty promises, offering neither shelter nor solace. The thought of staying on the streets terrified her, yet there was nowhere else to go. As fear began to creep in, Emma noticed a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye. Her heart pounded as she whipped her head around. Emerging from the darkness like a ghost was a large, black dog. The dog was drenched, his fur plastered to his frame, yet he held his head high. His eyes glinted under the faint glow of a nearby streetlight. Emma's first instinct was to retreat further into her corner, but something about the dog stilled her. The dog approached in silence, pausing just a few feet away. His dark, watchful eyes met hers, and in that moment, Emma saw no threat, only a quiet understanding. She noticed the name Max engraved on a worn metal tag hanging from his collar. Max moved closer and curled himself protectively around her feet. The gentle weight of him and his solid warmth brought unexpected comfort. For the first time in as long as she could remember, Emma didn't feel entirely alone. All night, Max stayed by her side, his head alert yet calm, as his eyes scanned the shadows. Occasionally he glanced down at her, as if checking to ensure she was still there. Emma found herself lulled by the rhythm of Max's breathing and the warmth radiating from his body. She clutched a corner of his wet fur, grounding herself to this strange, new companion. Despite the ferocity of the storm, sleep eventually overtook her, her fears dulled by the presence of Max. By dawn, the storm had subsided, leaving the city glistening and eerily quiet. Emma awoke to find Max still beside her, his dark coat streaked with mud, but slightly drier. He nudged her gently with his snout, urging her to stand. Her legs felt weak and unsteady, but Max's presence strengthened her resolve. Together, they began to navigate the maze of alleys, Max taking the lead with purpose. He eventually stopped near a discarded paper bag at the edge of a street vendor's stall. Inside was a half-eaten roll, a relic from the previous day's market. Max placed it in front of Emma, who gratefully shared it with him. As they ate, Emma glanced at Max's tag again. "Thank you, Max," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Max met her gaze with a steady, knowing look. For now, that was enough. Later, as they rested, Emma found herself tracing the edge of Max's ear with her fingers. His warm, rough fur bristled beneath her touch. She hadn't planned on sharing her story with anyone, but Max's patient gaze coaxed her to speak. In a soft whisper she began, "I had parents once. They were kind, I think. I can barely remember their faces now." Her voice broke slightly, but Max stayed still, his steady presence urging her on. "They used to take me to a park," she continued. "There was this bench by a pond where we'd sit. My dad would tell me stories about the ducks gliding on the water like it was made just for them. I thought it would always be like that." Emma let out a faint, tremulous laugh. "But one day, they didn't come back." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "They said it was an accident. Just one moment, and everything disappeared." "Do you remember anything like that?" she asked. "Of course not. They said it was an accident. Just one moment, and everything disappeared." "They said it was an accident. Just one moment, and everything faint as scotched. We looked for it years. They said it was an accident." "Yes, did like that." First, the silence between them grew heavy as Emma fought the tightening in her throat. "After they were gone, I went to the orphanage. They said it would be a place where I'd be taken care of. But that wasn't true. They punished me for remembering, for asking why. They said memories wouldn't bring them back, so why cling to them?" Her words spilled out, faster now. "If I made a mistake, they'd lock me in a room with no lights. It was like being invisible, like I didn't exist." Emma's shoulders shook as she exhaled a shaky breath. Max pressed his wet nose into her palm, then gave her a gentle lick. The quiet, deliberate gesture warmed something inside her, a feeling she hadn't known in so long. She buried her fingers in Max's fur, whispering, "Thank you, Max." His unwavering loyalty made her feel anchored, a tether holding her steady in the chaos. Chloe's voice was gentle, and her words hung in the air with an undeniable sincerity. Emma gave a small nod, her eyes wide as she took in the space. It felt surreal, this kindness, this sense of belonging that seemed to emanate from the walls. Max nudged her hand, his warm, wet nose grounding her in the moment. She knelt down, wrapping her arms around his scruffy neck, holding him tightly. "Chloe," Max said, grasping her arms above her head. "It's a lot. I mean it. You stayed with me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You always stayed. This is me." Max's tail wagged, and he licked her cheek as if to say he always would. The sound of soft footsteps retreating down the hallway told Emma that Chloe had left her alone to absorb it all. Slowly, Emma sank onto the bed, her fingers trailing over the stuffed rabbit and the smooth, cool comforter. It was the first time in a long while that she felt safe, that she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could let her guard down. Later that evening, the three of them sat together in the living room, Max curled up at Emma's feet, while Chloe prepared tea in the small adjoining kitchen. The soft glow of a lamp bathed the room in warm light, and the faint hum of the kettle added a soothing backdrop to the quiet. Chloe returned with 2 mugs, setting one gently in front of Emma. "It's chamomile," she said. "I thought you might like something calming after today." She sighed and passed the mugs back. Then she glanced at Robert. He stared, his eyes not lifting. Emma hesitated for a moment before wrapping her hands around the mug, the warmth seeping into her fingers. She took a small sip, the floral taste unfamiliar but comforting. "Thank you," Emma said softly, her voice barely audible. Chloe smiled. "You're welcome." Emma's chest tightened at Chloe's words, but this time the ache was different. It wasn't the sharp pain of loss or the heavy weight of loneliness. It was something softer, something that felt like hope. "Emma, I didn't have anyone else," Emma admitted after a long pause. "But Max, he made me feel like I wasn't alone." Chloe nodded, her gaze steady and understanding. "He has a way of doing that, doesn't he? Bringing people together, even when we don't expect it." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the occasional crackle from the fireplace. Max let out a contented sigh, his body relaxed in a way Emma had never seen before. She reached down, running her fingers through his fur, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. "The twin pieces of you, you will soon see something that will change your freedom." "How are we going to make a fast call?" she asked, lips squeezed tight. "So it," Max said, his voice thin. "Did there, well, to sound like me." Away. This was her new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to trust, and to love. And with Max and Chloe by her side, Emma felt ready to face whatever came next.